Welcome to God's Vibes. I'm Juliana Page, and I teach the inner life behind lasting leadership. If you're ready to become a leader God can trust, you're in the right place. Every week, we'll strengthen your spiritual, mental, emotional, and leadership capacity so you can faithfully steward your calling, influence, and relationships. Let's get started. What's good, Faith Walkers? Welcome back. We're going to dive into why healthy relationships are hard, but we can do hard things. I've had a mentor say that the best thing about life is relationships, and the hardest thing about life is relationships, because people are truly what bring beauty to our lives, but they also can be who challenge us the most as well, right? So this is going to be about becoming the kind of person healthy relationships can grow around, because what we often miss when we are so trained to look outside of ourselves is that we are actually people that can produce health and contribute health and need to be on the lookout for health, right? So that is what we are establishing. That is what we are advancing. So the big idea that we're going to dive into together today is that healthy relationships are not built by finding perfect people. And in fact, we will fail every time if that is our metric, if that is how we are measuring progress in relationships, just by who is perfect around us, who never unsettles us, who never challenges us, who never corrects us, then we will be miserable or deceived, right? So healthy relationships are built by healthy people who are committed to creating health. And you do need two people committed to that to create it, right? So if somebody is committed to being unhealthy, being dysfunctional, or maybe they won't even admit or embrace that they have any weaknesses, then you can't build health with somebody like that. You need two people that are committed to establishing and co-creating health. Okay, not perfection, health. All right. So the question then, and the great opportunity, is not who can I trust? And I'll explain why we often start with this question. But the deeper question becomes, am I becoming the kind of person that God can trust with relationships? I know as a leader, this is something that I just really sit and reflect a lot on, right? Who are you that God sends people and trust you with their minds, with their hearts, with their souls, with their emotional experiences? That is a whole lot of responsibility. You have the power to really destroy and hurt somebody as much as you have the ability to build them up. I like to think about the same tongue that can speak blessing also can speak cursing. You have so much power all of the time, but we're not thinking and reflecting on how powerful we are and the consequences of that if that's not cared for and well-trained and well-intentioned. Okay, so we're going to talk about why healthy relationships are so hard. Okay, but that is not why you run from them, but it is an opportunity for you to become somebody that healthy relationships can just naturally grow around. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into this. If you want to invite people here, that would be great for them to hear this and encourage them and strengthen them in a relationship as well. Anybody that is in a relationship, whether that's with themselves or other people, anyone who is a leader, a parent, right? They can benefit from this message. So go ahead, take a minute to subscribe and share. Thank you in advance for that. Okay, so there was a season, I remember this very vividly, as I'm sure you have seasons in your own life, where I kept asking, who can I trust? Who can I trust? And this was because I had really learned some fragmented ways of being, right? I had learned some things that did not serve me, like how to keep the peace, like how to not disrupt the status quo, how to please other people. And so I started in time to realize that that wasn't right. Like those things were trained, but they were not creating peace in my life. They were not creating health in my life. They were starting to sabotage my very life. And so I started to become resistant to those things, but I didn't know the better things to do yet, so I wasn't trained to do them. And so eventually I started losing trust with myself, because as your identity shifts, so do you, right? And if you do not have a firm identity, if your identity is not rooted and grounded and founded in Christ, right, then it's susceptible to be shifting all the time, which means you're shifting all the time and you're double-minded and unstable in all of your ways. And so I had, in short, lost trust with myself because of a lot of brokenness around me, and then a lot of relational patterns that I kept seeing being reflected back to me. So what I had to do was I had to look at that and say, okay, what is my part in this, and who can I trust? Because if I can't trust me, and I can't trust other people, and I don't really know God and I can't trust God, then who can I trust? Like, life becomes a really scary place when you don't have big trust, okay? So I needed, in that season when I was really being healed, set free, and delivered from a whole lot of trauma and heart wounds, right? When I was being purged and cleansed, if you will, and God was performing heart surgery on me is the best way to describe this, I started going through these questions with the Lord, which is really necessary. Show me who's safe, God. Show me who's dangerous, right? Show me who's healthy, and show me who's not. Okay, these were things that I just naturally wanted to ask because I wanted to protect myself. I had endured a lot of pain. I wanted to avoid that at all costs, and that is human. And some of you might find yourself right there, right? But it wasn't necessarily spiritually mature, emotionally mature, mentally sound. And there were some flaws in that. So instead, God kept asking me a different question. And he kept saying, who are you becoming? Who are you becoming? And I'm like, who can I trust? And he's like, who are you becoming? And I'm like, you're not really answering my question. You're answering my question with a question, which is really interesting, right? So what I found is, before we ask God about anybody else's heart, we have to invite him to search our own. Okay, and David is such a great example of this. You see this all throughout the Psalms, but there's one specific one, which is Psalm 139:23, and he says this: search me thoroughly, like literally evaluate my innermost being, all my innermost parts, right? Search me thoroughly, O God, and know my heart. Like, I don't even know my heart. Search me thoroughly and know my heart. See if there is any wicked or hurtful way in me, and lead me in the way everlasting. So when we have been a bully to ourselves, or when we participated in self-sabotage, right? When we haven't been walking with our Lord and Savior, when we haven't been dependent on the Lord, when we haven't known him as a father and let him lead, guide, and establish us, we've been letting other things lead, guide, and establish us. Okay? And so that makes it really hard then to know what is right and what is wrong. And we need God to help us know that and discern that. We don't know what is good, what is noble, what is praiseworthy, right? What delights God's heart until we start developing a relationship with the Lord, okay? So healthy people, though, begin with awareness. They begin with self-examination. So healthy people stop looking outside of themselves and looking to point fingers and looking for someone to target, or looking for someone to blame, or looking for somebody that they can just project their stuff onto to dodge responsibility and accountability. They actually flip that script entirely and look at themselves, but they don't do that by themselves, because they know if they look at themselves by themselves, they won't get the right evaluation. So healthy people self-examine with the Lord, because the Lord will show you what is blocking his nature in you so that you can repent for that, release that, okay? So that he can set things right so that you can walk uprightly, okay? Now, as we move into this, again, why are relationships so hard? Well, that right there makes it pretty hard. When you've been hurt, then you often have a foundation that is not solid. It's unstable, right? And then you look for stability outside of you and are disappointed all the time. And so God has to create stability in you so that you know what your home base is. You know what safety is. You know what security is. You know what trust is before you can really start embodying that and demonstrating that and recognizing it and co-creating that with other people. So there's a process here, but it starts with self-examination so you can see things clearly. Not from all of the chaos, but you can start moving and sifting through the chaos and see clearly. Okay? Now, this is why relationships are actually very helpful, because they often reveal more than they create. Okay? And they more than often reveal our insides and reflect and mirror those back to us. So most people think that relationships create problems. Okay? Like if I just remove this person, if this person would just behave this way, then, right? That's sort of the setup. However, relationships often just reveal problems that currently exist or opportunities to heal, to grow, to strengthen something that's currently weak. Okay? And that's not a source of judgment, of condemnation, of guilt, or of shame. It's just an opportunity to see things as they are, not as you want them to be. Okay? So pressure will reveal, conflicts will reveal, disappointment will reveal. These things are all revealing what is beneath the surface. There's more than that what meets the eye, right? So James writes it this way in James 1, verses 2 through 4. The testing of your faith produces endurance so that you may be perfect and completely developed, lacking in nothing. Okay? So God often uses relationships as one of his greatest tools for spiritual formation. It's like he uses them to soften out, smooth out our rough edges, to bring down our walls and our barriers of self-protection, to purify and soften our hearts so that our hearts can be sensitive to him and to his motive, which is to love others, right? So he uses relationship as these greatest tools to allow his nature to be formed in you, right? Like people are often sparring partners to become more Christ-like. And God knows the right people to really refine you, right? So just like squeezing an orange doesn't create orange juice, right? It's revealing what is already inside the orange. Okay, so when you think about squeezing an orange, that doesn't just automatically create the orange juice. Okay, it reveals what's already inside of the orange. So when you get squeezed, when you get stretched, when you get twisted, what starts coming out of you? That's often what relationships will reveal. Okay? Relationships reveal and expose what is already inside of us. Whew. Here's what Proverbs is just a book of wisdom. Okay? Here's what Proverbs reminds us. Proverbs 27:17. As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. Okay? So sharpening, I don't know about you, but I personally don't find that comfortable. You're being scraped, you're being stretched, you're being cut up, right? Like that does not feel comfortable. But wisdom will let you know that it is necessary. Okay? So love requires, what makes relationships hard is that love requires more maturity than most people realize, and that scares most people because most people, whether they'd like to admit it or not, they like the idea of things, not what those things will actually require of them. So they like the idea of truth. It sounds good, but I don't like what the truth is going to require of me. I like the idea of having a healthy relationship, but I don't like the idea of what that's going to require of me, who I'm going to have to become to co-create that, what I'm going to have to consistently do to nurture that, to develop that, to pour into that, to establish that, right? Like they don't just happen like a snap of a finger, yet somehow we think it's like a microwave. We just put something in there and poof, it happens, right? But that's not how anything great happens and anything of any depth happens. There is consistency, there's contribution, there's intention, there's nurturing, there's development, there's a process, and that evolves over time. That's why trust takes years to build and seconds to break. That's very sobering. So love requires more maturity than most people realize, and people committed to not growing, not self-examining, because you have to have a lot of courage to self-examine. You have to have a willingness to look inside and be humble, be honest, be transparent. And that's scary. That's scary if that's not a current value, or if you've never done that before, because it can feel like exposure. Like if you know that you're not healthy, you usually want to hide that from people, especially if you value perfectionism. If you get exposed for not being perfect, your whole identity and ego will fall apart. And that feels like death, and it is, right? But that is necessary to be free sometimes. So not everybody is willing to look within. Not everyone with their free will is willing to endure the process required to be mature and to go on to maturity. So as much as they like the idea of things, that doesn't automatically mean that they will embrace the work required. Most people avoid this inner work, okay? Because it's hard. It's the hardest thing you'll ever do. So to make that more complex, most people weren't taught healthy relationships, and that wasn't modeled to them. And even if they came from beautiful households and had a beautiful upbringing, and maybe they did see some health, they're not trained for how to handle the lack of maturity, the lack of health. They don't know how to manage those things because they've only seen health. So they know what to do in healthy environments. They don't know what to do in dysfunctional ones, right? So not that one is better than the other, but we have to understand that there's complexities that require maturity, that require wisdom and discernment, whether you come from health or unhealth. Okay, you have to be committed to learning and to growing no matter where God plants you. Okay, so most of us, though, didn't see really great examples, and we have the opportunity to become them. But where this is challenging is we were taught survival, and we developed skills and tools that worked against us, right? Like self-sabotage was a tool, a strategy, if you will, to survive in an environment or reality that was too painful to be in. So we started sabotaging ourselves in order to sustain the complications of that environment. However, that's not a life strategy. That was a trauma strategy, right? So that doesn't help us when we need to be able to thrive. The skills and the tools that you develop to survive will not be the same skills and tools that you need to thrive, right? What you learned to tolerate in unhealthy relationships, you have to learn to release, to repent of, in order to learn new skills to be in healthy relationships. Because healthy relationships are not built on tolerating dysfunction. They're built on co-creating health, and that's a totally different objective, okay? So when you're taught survival, you learn things like keeping the peace, not confronting things in love. You learn avoiding conflict, not getting radically honest, right? You learned to rescue people, not to let them actually use their free will and experience the consequences of that. You learned how to control outcomes rather than to allow outcomes to evolve, to contribute to them but not control them. You learned how to people please rather than to truly value people. You learned how to withdraw instead of being transparent. You learned how to pretend instead of being authentic, and being vulnerable and letting people see you, all of you. Parts that are weak, parts that are strong, parts that are messy, right? You learn to just pretend and put masks all over that. And those are survival strategies. And they worked for a time, but it takes a rare one to have the courage to say, I forgive the part of me that embraced that as love, that embraced that as health. And I repent for those things, and I'm committed to walking in love, to walking uprightly, and to learning new skills and modeling a new way by God's power and for his glory, because you can't do it apart from God. So survival strategies don't necessarily equal, all right, relational maturity. And this is why we can go from relationship to relationship, job to job, one environment to another, church to church, whatever it happens to be, and still not grow and evolve, still experience the same complications everywhere, and then blame the people, blame the environments, blame the ministries, blame the leaders, instead of actually taking a hard look at yourself and seeing yourself perhaps as the common denominator in all of those things. Because if you keep arriving in dysfunction, maybe, just maybe, you like it more than you think you do. Maybe you've trained yourself to somehow crave it and to enjoy it. Otherwise, you would stop finding yourself in it. You would stop accepting it, stop tolerating it, stop devoting your energy to it. Okay? So Paul describes something very different than survival strategies. Here's what he says. Ephesians 4:2-3. With all humility and gentleness, with patience bearing with one another in love, making every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit. That's the work, not to defend your points, not to be right? But to keep the unity of the Spirit, to walk with humility, walk with gentleness, walk with patience. You can't be reactive. You can't be super moody and emotional. You will destroy things that way. Walking in love requires more effort and maturity than you realize. And he says, make every effort. Make every effort. Like, this is the work. This is the work, and it will have its way with you. And it will produce the fruit that lasts, the fruit that remains. It's building unto eternity, not just for instant pleasure and gratification. Okay? So healthy relationships require intentionality, and you have to self-examine before you're going to know how to move in these different situations. Later, he also says this in Colossians 3:12. He says, clothe yourselves. Like, I actually like thinking of putting on some sort of robe, right? Clothe yourselves with compassion, with kindness, with humility, with gentleness, with patience, forgiving one another. Beyond all these things, put on love. Put on love. So love isn't merely something we feel, it's something we intentionally put on every day. And it's something that we can intentionally choose one day at a time, one step at a time, in a moment at a time. And it's essentially what Jesus says, choose this day whom you're going to serve. Are you going to serve God? Are you going to serve the mission of love? Are you going to serve the enemy, who ultimately has a 3-part agenda to kill, steal, and destroy? And if you think and meditate deep down, I don't think anybody ultimately wants to kill, steal, and destroy another person. Not a healthy person anyway. And you don't get anywhere by doing that. In fact, you are sowing seeds. You are sowing seeds onto a harvest. And that's just not a good thing to get good at. You do not want to get good at killing, stealing, or destroying. But bearing one another up, right? Loving one another. Spurring one another on to love and good works. Now, if you keep seeing patterns around you where people are not choosing this, that doesn't mean demonize the person. That doesn't mean gossip and slander this person. That does not mean tear this person down. But it does mean that you can't walk perhaps the same way that you were walking with that person. You can't be as closely connected as maybe you once were. And that can be deeply grievous to your heart. That can be really sad. And you will grieve if you are a human with a heart. That will hurt your heart because it's not what you wanted. It's not what you would choose, but it is what is happening. And you can't live in denial. You can't pretend that this is okay. You can't keep tolerating it because then you're authorizing it. So you do have to address it properly, but that does not mean that you shut down love towards a person. You just change how closely you walk with that person and how connected you're going to be. If they can't walk in honor, then you can't walk with them. If they can't walk in truth and your life is committed to it, then you can't walk with them. If they are pretending and performing that they are for you, but constantly demonstrating that they have a wicked agenda where they are gossiping about you, tearing you down, forming alliances to gang up against you, that is not somebody that is for you. And you cannot pretend that that is somebody that is for you because it will absolutely destroy you and everything that you're building. So you do have to take this seriously, but you do not shut down your heart, and you work quickly to die to self and to forgive quickly and often, and to make sure that you maintain your focus on what the Lord is entrusting you to do, and that you walk in love and you walk in honor because you are loving and because you are honorable. You cannot control how other people are going to show up, but you can absolutely control the boundaries that you put in place, the patterns and the fruit that you see, and what you're going to do with that. But there is a way to address it that is healthy, right? You can confront things in love. You can address them. You can go to the person and bring out that issue before the person, right? You don't have to plaster it all over the internet. You go to the person and you have a healthy conversation. Now, if this person is continuing to demonstrate these patterns, that's just showing you where they are. That doesn't make them good, bad, right, or wrong, but that lets you know how closely you can be walking with this person. And you do have to be clear on what your role and what your assignment with people is. Something that I've always found really, really helpful is looking at relationships through reason, season, or lifetime. Sometimes people are in your life for a reason. Sometimes these are who people seemingly operate as enemies, right? Those people were in your life for a reason. To provoke you, to wake you up, to stir you up, to teach you a very powerful lesson, right? To wisen you up, right? You were naive to this, now you're not. Now you fully see it, now you won't miss it in the future because you learned that lesson, right? Some people are in our lives to humble us, right? And we learn from our mistakes, and sometimes those are the biggest lessons that we can learn. Right? So people can come into your life for a reason. Sometimes they're in your life for a season. And not all seasons are permanent. Seasons change, right? So they are in your life. Like the people that were in your life in the darkest season, maybe they're just in your life to help you get through that healing season. Okay? But maybe they're not in your life for life. Or some people that were in your life as you were evolving and growing, maybe they stayed on this level of growth and you're committed to keep on growing. So you can't continue to walk together. So there are people that are in your life for a reason, a season, or sometimes a lifetime. There are some people that are in your life with you for life, right? And it's really amazing and beautiful how God can do that. Now, those relationships evolve just like you. There's so many versions of you, if you will, that you embrace or that you learn as you evolve. Okay. And that's a good thing. So sometimes that can be really helpful to see. But remember, love isn't merely something we feel. It is something we intentionally put on, and we can choose to do that every single day. And it's so important that the love that you want to receive, you are demonstrating. And that's where the real work begins, when you stop looking at other people to treat you some kind of way and you steward love. You steward love. Stop looking for it outside of you. You are connected to love. Make sure you're stewarding it instead. Okay? Now, healthy relationships just in general require healthy people. And I understand that this sounds like common sense, but when you are conditioned for the lack of health and when you are conditioned for dysfunction, that is still familiar to your nervous system. That is still familiar to you. You've gotten comfortable with it because it's familiar, not necessarily because it's what you deserve or what you desire, but because it's familiar. So you just know how to operate in it because it's been familiar to you your whole life. Okay? But healthy people start to ask different questions from a curious place, not a skeptical or judgmental place. Okay? So it's not what's wrong? Who's to blame? Who can I point a finger at or make a story about, right? Who should I cut off? Who should I just give an ultimatum, right? These are sort of aggressive and reactive, right? Instead, healthy people will humble themselves before the Lord so that the Lord can lift them up. And they'll ask this: Lord, what are you teaching me? What would you have me see? What would you have me know? Where do I need to grow? Show me my heart. Reveal my heart. Where do I need to repent? And they're quick to repent and they're quick to forgive, right? You can forgive because you've been forgiven much. So you are asked and required to forgive. Jesus said, Matthew 7:3, why do you look at the speck in your brother's eye, but you do not notice the log in your own eye? This is sort of like people, I don't know if they still do this, but they used to say when you point a finger at somebody, you have three fingers pointing back at you. So you're usually, in a sense, more at fault than the one finger that you're pointing at other people. Like, you got more going on than what you're trying to blame somebody else for. So why don't you look at what's going on with you before you get so bold in your mission to attack somebody else? Right? So healthy people will examine themselves before evaluating others. Like, can you believe what that person did, how they're showing up, what they're doing, right? Like, before doing that, healthy people won't do that. They will look at themselves and be like, oh, wow, like I'm seeing this tendency to do this, or I'm seeing that I'm starting to get emotional about this, or I'm seeing that I'm starting to think these really heavy burdensome thoughts about this. Like, they will self-examine, okay, before they will get busy about evaluating anybody else. David said, search me, know my heart, lead me, right? This is checking yourself before you wreck yourself and other people, because what unhealthy people will do is avoid this work entirely. Instead, they will just defend, okay? And they will create stories, or they will blame. So it's almost the game of hot potato. As long as I just get it off of me and I make somebody else wrong, then I don't have to look at me. I don't have to self-examine. I don't have to get uncomfortable. I don't have to admit that I have any sort of weakness going on. Their ego can't handle that, right? And ego, I define that as edging God out. The more you stop edging God out, the more resilient you become, the more humble you become, the more moldable and pliable in God's hands you become, because your ego is directly, right, in the way of you depending on God and you obeying God, because it's protecting an image, right? But you don't need to protect that image when you're secure in Christ. Okay, so unhealthy people will defend. Healthy people instead will invite examination. They might even seek wise counsel. So people that can actually see them and that they love them and they trust their counsel. Okay, now here's a way to self-examine. Okay, when it comes to relationships, can you tell a story about a situation without making yourself the hero and somebody else a villain? So sometimes when we're hurt, we make the other person the problem. We make ourselves the victim, okay? And we make them our enemy. And people are not your enemy. People are not your enemy. People are not your enemy, okay? So one of the greatest indicators of emotional maturity is this. You can tell the story without making yourself the hero, without making yourself the villain, without making anybody else a villain. You can just tell the story neutrally, because every conflict has more than one perspective. There's always more than one side to a story. That's why when you see a documentary, for example, you're seeing one side of a story. When you're seeing the news, you're seeing one side of a story. You're never seeing the full picture, and it takes research, it takes work, it takes effort to get the full picture. And we're only going to know parts of it. And so that's why we have to, for example, if you hear a rumor, are you quick to believe the rumor? Did you even qualify the source? Did you go to the person that the rumor was about? That's just a Selah moment, okay? So can you tell a story without making yourself the hero and everyone else a villain? Because every conflict has more than one perspective, all right? Proverbs says this, the first one to plead his case seems right. The first one to plead his case seems right, until another comes and examines him. Holy Moses, that's just straight Bible, right? The first one to plead his case seems right, until another comes and examines him. So my translation of this, my revelation of this, is usually the person who has behaved the worst, or the person who is sort of villainizing somebody else, or blame shifting or projecting. They tell the loudest story, and they try to quickly establish a narrative. When healthy and mature people can see this happening and sometimes have to be silent while it plays out. They have to operate in meekness and be silent. The Lord will fight for you. You need only be still. So that looks like you're naive. That looks like you're careless. That looks like you are weak. Not so. Meekness is not weakness. It's wisdom. It's a fruit of the Spirit. And that's evidence that you humbled yourself before the Lord, because you absolutely could defend yourself. You absolutely could set the story straight. You absolutely probably have ways that you could hurt somebody. But you're not positioning yourself to do that, because that's not who you are. That's not your role in that person's life. That was never your character or your objective in the first place. So what do? You don't worry about your reputation. You let the Lord take care of that. Does that make sense? But the person that's usually up to no good will expose themselves. They will overplay their hand because that's what partnering with the enemy does. The enemy always overplays his hand. Whatever is in the dark will absolutely come to the light. But you have to have a whole lot of wisdom, discernment, self-control, and restraint to allow yourself to be gossiped about, to have people libel and slander you, to have people create stories about you and come for your character without you needing to set every record straight, to defend your name, or to go after every misconception that's floating up about you. Let it air out. Let it rise. Let it rise. Because eventually, people of health and of character and people that actually know you will start to see the source of that, the motive of that, the nature of that, and that it's not true. Lies will expose themselves in time. So you have to be secure in that, okay? So sometimes the innocent stay silent. That happens a lot, especially in psychological or emotional abuse, okay? It's really interesting how that can happen. Sometimes the guilty speak the loudest, right? They create really great stories. They're really great actors. Can you tell the difference between authenticity and great acting? Well, you're not going to tell the difference if you're a great actor yourself. If you are faking it, you will see other people, right, performing as well. Okay? If you are real, you will recognize real, right? So this is why discernment matters. And we are discerning hidden things. We are discerning motives. We are discerning hearts. We are discerning spirits. But we are not coming for people, right? Like, we are not demonizing people. We are not calling them some sort of demonic spirit. No, we are calling out the gold in them. We are giving them the opportunity to be what they forgot. You are a chosen. You are a royal one. You are from a royal priesthood. This is foolishness, and you're better than that. And I speak to the gold in you. I speak to the life in you. And even when you demonstrate these behaviors, I don't make those behaviors your identity. I can see beyond the spirit that is operating. I can see beyond the behaviors, and I can still love you. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm going to tolerate disrespect and dishonor. I'm going to address it, right, and give you the opportunity to rise the occasion. But if you choose to keep causing harm, then that has consequences too, right? So discernment is not going to chase the loudest voice, okay? It's not going to be quick to gossip. It's not going to form rumor mills. It's not going to do that. Like, that's actually witchcraft. Why would you rally around trying to kill, steal, or destroy another person? Only the devil would do that, right? So discernment will absolutely study fruit and observe motives and watch patterns. Jesus said, by their fruit, you will recognize them. Matthew 7:16. However, if you don't recognize your own fruit, you're not going to recognize it in other people. So this is why it always starts with you. So you're not going to, however, how you see this is you're not going to go off of one moment. You're not going to go off of one conversation, off of one accusation, off of one encounter, off of one offense. You're going to go by fruit. And usually this comes from walking with somebody over a period of time, through being in relationship with somebody. Okay, this is where it's more challenging. Like, if a stranger does something that you don't agree with, that doesn't affect you the same way that somebody you love doing that does. Right? Because there's been an evolution typically with somebody you love. There's been relationship. There's been connection that's been developed over time. Okay? So through this connection, you're seeing fruit over time. Okay? And fruit takes time. So that's why you can't be quick to judge or just make random assumptions. John adds to this, do not judge by appearance, by what your natural eye sees and observes, but judge with righteous judgment. Do you see how that's different? John 7:24, judge with righteous judgment. Judge how God judges. Healthy people separate observation from projection. Okay? Observation says, I'm noticing there's a pattern here. There's this pattern of entitlement. There's this pattern of envy, jealousy, and comparison. There's this pattern of gossip and stirring up strife and division. There's this pattern of performance. There's this pattern of moodiness, right? Like there's patterns that you see over time. Just like there's a pattern of peacemaking. There's a pattern of boldness. There's a pattern of creating safety and security. There's a pattern of navigating conflicts and adversities with wisdom and excellence. There's a pattern of humility. There's a pattern of love. Like it looks like something, right? Fruit. Okay. So observation says, I'm noticing this pattern. I'm noticing this fruit. Projection says, I know why they're doing that. Well, you're actually not in another person. You're like not zipped up in their being. You don't actually know why another person is doing what they're doing. A lot of times they don't even know why they're doing what they're doing. They're uncomfortable. Something felt crazy. And so they acted out of it. But you don't know why they did that. You might think that you do, but that's where you get in trouble, right? So those are not the same thing. You can observe a pattern, but you don't always know their motive. You don't always know why they're doing that. So you can observe that somebody maybe showed up in your life this way, but you don't necessarily know the intentions behind why they did that. Or you might assume that, and that's where you can really get in trouble with that, because now you're making up a story about a person versus talking to them about it. Okay, so discernment, to clarify, it's not suspicion. Okay, it is patient, where suspicion is anxious. Discernment will ask questions, not like a private investigator, right? But it will ask with genuine interest and curiosity. But suspicion will assume answers. Oh, this person is this person did it because of this. That's what suspicion will do. And that is not coming from a humble or compassionate place at all. You can probably hear it when I say it like that, right? So Paul tells us, do not quench the spirit. Do not quench the spirit. Do not despise prophecies, but test all things carefully. Test them carefully. Like, what is that? What is going on in me? What is my thought about that? Does that agree with the truth? Is that true? Can I absolutely know that that's true? What is this emotion revealing about what's going on in my heart? Like that takes a lot of work, okay? So you have to test all things carefully and hold firmly to that which is good. It's going to be so easy to cling to what is not good and to hold fast to what stirs up strife and division. That is not what you want to hold fast to. This is 1 Thessalonians 5:19. So notice that the scripture does not say believe everything or reject everything. It's not hot cold like that, right? Wisdom is for gray areas. It says test everything. Proverbs says this, Proverbs 18:13. He who answers before he hears the facts, it is folly and shame to him. Lord have mercy. He who answers before he hears the facts, it is folly and shame to him. So, sure, gather facts, observe fruit, but wait, practice some patience. Paul also prays that your love may abound in the knowledge and all discernment. This is Philippians 1:9. The point of discernment is for love to abound, for the glory of God to be revealed in, through, and all around you. Not for the enemy to be glorified, not for his kingdom to advance. So biblical love grows alongside discernment, but most of the time, people look at discernment as judgment or suspicion, and those are not synonymous, okay? You need discernment, and you absolutely need wisdom and understanding in order to know what to do with that discernment. So discernment is often a starting point. It's like a noticing, okay? Now, prophetic people specifically, okay, need emotional maturity, all right? Prophetic people often receive revelation quickly, okay? But maturity will teach you that you need to move in step with the Lord. You don't move as quickly as revelation comes, because revelation is coming before a thing to inform you about what is being formed, what is being stirred up, to help you walk uprightly through a potential challenge, to help you avoid a landmine that you might otherwise walk into. So an example of this, I was getting, over the past several years, so many words about what God was doing in Courage Go. And that was really affecting what I was doing, because I'm not building for accolades. I'm not building for approval of man. I'm not building to have a presentation of something. I am building to obey God and to advance his kingdom and do what he said for me to do, right? So I have to humble myself and obey him at every step. And so building the kingdom usually is a slow burn, okay? Because it requires a process. It's not like just like this quick thing like we think and like what the world says. So as I was doing that, he kept saying to me that I am knitting things together. He kept showing me like a quilt and knitting together all these elements, and he's knitting people together for such a time as this. And I thought, that is just beautiful, right? But in order to be knit together, you have to go through life together. And that can be really uncomfortable, because people are in seasons that they didn't expect. They're navigating emotions and thoughts in different circumstances that they never saw themselves in, and they're doing it together. And that can be messy before it's miraculous, right? And so that can be really tense and really difficult to do, especially if you haven't developed skills yet, or you don't have the tools to navigate that well, right? So the Lord is telling me this because he wants me to know that the mission that he's on, to partner with me, you need to be on the mission of knitting people together in love, growing and maturing in love, making sure that we are walking in unity in the Spirit. That's the mission. Now, what started happening, right, that I'm sure maybe on the outside it looked like I was oblivious to, was gossip, was rumors, was attacks against character, was slander, was bullying, was side conversations, and kind of people ganging up, was legal battles, like people trying to steal, was people actually plagiarizing and stealing content and trying to create things with it as if that were their own. There were so many things that were trying to create strife and division, right? To get me off mission. Can you see this? And this is spiritually discerned. So I had revelation that God said, I am knitting things together and you need to be committed to building unity in the Spirit. Okay? So that means when I see the opposite spirit, I'm not going to partake in those things. I'm not going to give those airtime. I'm not going to let those affect me or get me off course. Now, I'm going to be aware of them. I'm going to notice them, and I'm going to be praying about that, and I'm going to be asking for the wisdom to know what to do. Sort of like when you're in a battle, you keep asking, what's the strategy, Lord? Do I advance? Do I not advance? Like, what do I do? And so you have to be very intentional and do that all the time. But from the outside, people don't know what's going on. Right? And they might think that you're weak, that you're naive, that you have no idea what's going on, right? But when you are spiritually attuned to what the Lord is doing, you see a lot more than people in the natural see. Okay? But what you do with that is going to be really important, and that's everything, right? So in order to maintain unity, you have to be partnered with unity. You have to be focused on unity. In order to maintain love, you have to be overflowing in it. In order to stay pure, you have to constantly humble yourself before the Lord, and you have to let him prune you and refine you, and you have to grieve things, and you have to let different emotions be processed through you, and it takes a lot of maturity to do that. And all of that is happening with your wonderful counselor behind the scenes, because his mission is everything. Does this make sense? So revelation, you might receive that quickly and be like, oh, goody, right? But then often the enemy works in direct opposition to that revelation. So maturity will teach you not to move as quickly as the revelation comes, to be in slow and steady, right? Turtle power. Okay? Habakkuk reminds us this, write the vision, though it delays. It also says in other versions, though it tarries, wait patiently for it, for surely it will come to pass. Okay, so you have to be committed to what is coming to pass, not what the enemy is trying to stir up. Because if you get distracted by what the enemy is doing, right, you'll be swept up off mission. Kind of like Nehemiah, as he was building the wall, as he was committed to God's assignment, he had all this warfare and all this opposition telling him to get off the wall and to get off his assignment, and he refused to come down. He stayed on the wall. He kept building. Okay, so I knew what I was supposed to do, but that didn't make it any easier necessarily. That didn't make it feel any better. It just made me clear in my commitment and in my intention. Okay, so sometimes the vision is clear, but the timing isn't. And you don't know what you're going to have to endure as you steward the vision. Proverbs warns this: he who hurries with his feet acts impulsively and misses the mark. And we all have fallen short of the glory. We all have sinned, right? Which means we've all missed the mark. Okay? Proverbs 19:2. So the more prophetic you become, the more trained in that gift you become, the slower you should become, the more intentional you should become, the more at peace and at rest in your heavenly seat you should be. You ask more questions. You gather more wisdoms. You don't move the way desperation does. You don't move the way urgency does. You don't move the way anxiety or insecurity does. When you are secure, when you are rooted and grounded in the Lord, you move differently. It's his approval that you're after, and you already have it. So you're not trying to quickly move into things that are none of your business, because those things will take care of themselves because the Lord fights for you. You need only be still, right? Proverbs 3:5 says, trust in and rely confidently on the Lord. So you don't want to trust in what you see. You don't want to rely confidently on all the information that you can gather. It says, trust in and rely confidently on the Lord, and he will make your path straight. So you're going to see all this stuff maybe blowing up around you, okay? Or even people rising up against you. However, you need to trust and rely confidently on the Lord, okay? And he will make your path straight. So with Courage Co., there were many things that had to be confronted legally. And one of them was for just Courage Co. itself. And that felt intense, as you can imagine. When you dedicate your whole life to the Lord and to co-creating with him, and somebody positions themselves as an enemy in your life and tries to destroy that, that can feel shocking to you. That can feel very confusing and complex to you, because you wouldn't want to do that to anybody else. And you don't understand why somebody would position themselves that way against you, right? In this time, I really just sought the Lord, right? Like, Lord, what would you have me do? I'm aware that this is happening. I don't like that this is happening. There's so many other things that I would love to invest the resources that you've given me into that seem to advance the kingdom. However, I really sense strongly that this is not something for me to ignore, and that this is not something that's just going to go away, and that this actually isn't even a fight about what's this immediate focus, but it's about the future of what you're asking me to do. And so that feels a little bit weighty. So what would you have me do, Lord? Because what I'm committed to not doing, Lord, is making this person an enemy. While they are showing up as a bully, to me, I will not match the energy. I will not become like them. I will represent you well by your power and for your glory. So help me God, right? So show me what my position is. Like, what is my battle position? Like, what is my victorious position? Like, how do I need to position myself to see this thing through? No matter how long it takes, because I'm sure it's going to take, especially if it's legal, longer than I want it to, right? So show me what to do. Okay? And so things that he said: do not make this person your enemy. Pray for this person. Pray for their success. Pray for their relationship with the Lord. Pray for their blessing. Now, this seems so crazy, but you're supposed to pray for your enemies and those who spitefully use you. So the Lord is doing something in my heart. If you focus on your enemy, if you're not careful, you become like them. Okay, so the Lord wants you to forgive them in advance. I forgive this person for coming against me like this. I forgive this person for not knowing what they do. I forgive this person for viewing me this way, or for coming against what I've worked so hard to build and establish with the Lord. I forgive this person. And I pray for this person. Every time a ping of anxiety or a ping of fear or anger or frustration would come up, this is what you do, right? And you trust that you already had the victory. God says you are already victorious. You come through with the victory. So something that I did and that I demonstrated before people I was mentoring was I wrote out what heaven said. Heaven said, this is complete. This is what happened. And so I made a post about it and I wrote heaven's decree. And it was powerful and effective, and people believed it as if it was already true. And I said, we're just waiting for the natural to catch up, but this is the position. If you want to pray for me, if you want to partner with me in this, if you want to cover me in this, if you want to walk with me through this, this is the position. What I cannot allow room for is fear, doubt, insecurity, or anxiety. And I'm going to be trusting God with the provision, right? Because that's not what I planned to spend all this money doing, right? And it even assumes that I had that kind of provision to be just constantly pouring out into a legal battle, right? It takes faith when you don't have provision for a thing and you also have to fight for a thing. It takes faith even in that position to keep investing and sowing into other people and advancing them when you actually need that, right? That's where it takes faith, when you don't necessarily have overflow, yet you continue to overflow for other people. It's a test, and God is testing your heart. So in this time, right, I'm trusting in the Lord, relying confidently on Him, that the victory is already complete, that my heart is going to remain pure, that I'm going to come out better for this, and that I'm going to learn lessons about this, and I'm going to testify. 2.5 years later, that was so. Can you imagine what you go through in 2.5 years just with this one issue while so many others were happening, right? And issues that, again, people will never see, but how you steward them is everything. You can only steward them well if you are trusting in and relying confidently on the Lord. Those who fix their eyes on the Lord will remain in perfect peace because they trust in Him, right? Big problems can create big trust. They also lend themselves to great faith if you're embracing God's process, okay? Now, when it comes to relationship, the other thing that you have to pay attention to is loyalty versus stewardship. I think the world often teaches, sometimes families of origin teach this too, this like blind loyalty, this blind trust. But God teaches us stewardship, okay? So sometimes we are loyal to things that the Lord has already left, and that's actually what is getting us into trouble, okay? We are loyal to relationships, we're loyal to systems, we're loyal to business models, we're loyal to strategies, we're loyal to churches, we're loyal to ministries, we're loyal to people, places, and things that God has already left. Ecclesiastes reminds us in chapter 3, verse 1. Here's what it says. There is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. So Isaiah declares, do not remember the former things. I'm about to do a new thing. Isaiah 43:18. So sometimes stewardship changes, okay? That doesn't mean that love disappeared or that it wasn't real, it wasn't genuine, okay? It means the assignment shifted. Different. So like Abraham, Genesis 12:1 says, go away to the land which I will show you. Obedience requires movement, and sometimes that's leaving people that you never thought you would leave, leaving places that you never thought you would leave, leaving ideas that no longer serve you, releasing patterns that are no longer profitable for you, so that you can embrace the new things that God is doing, right? So with that, you have to know that love doesn't require pretending, and it's important that you know that. So as things shift and change, sometimes we want to pretend that it's okay or deny things that are no longer okay. But one of the healthiest things that you can say is, I don't have to pretend, right? I don't have to pretend that closeness is here that isn't here. I don't have to pretend that we have like this depth that we don't have. I don't have to pretend that we have this connection that we don't. I don't have to pretend that my role in your life is this. I don't have to keep giving in a one-sided dynamic and act like that's mutually respectful and honoring. Does this make sense? So love doesn't require pretending or false intimacy. It requires truth and honesty and transparency. Paul writes, love is to be sincere. Sincere. Romans 12:9. Not performative, not artificial, not with some sort of hidden agenda. Okay? He also says, speak the truth in love. Ephesians 4:15. Truth and love are never enemies. Romans 12:18 says this, if possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everybody. And that means distance sometimes. That means boundaries sometimes. That means having hard conversations one-on-one with somebody, confronting things in love versus being passive-aggressive, right? Like, it means something. So what you can work on is stop trying to control every single narrative. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can do is stop defending yourself. And that seems so weird because we want to defend ourselves. We want to protect ourselves, but that's actually not our job if we have a protector and a defender in God, right? So here is what it says in Mark 14:61. But he kept silent and did not answer. This is Jesus. And again, in Matthew 27:13, it says, he did not answer him, not even to a single charge. Peter explains why. While being reviled, he did not insult in return, but kept entrusting himself to him who judges fairly. 1 Peter 2:23. Wisdom dripping in every one of those verses. It means not every accusation deserves a response. Not every misunderstanding needs correcting, and not every problem that you see do you have to rush into. It's not always your battle, okay? Not every problem is your battle. So Proverbs gives us this remarkable wisdom. Proverbs 26:4. Do not answer a fool according to his foolishness. You'll become just like him. Hooey. Then immediately it says this, Proverbs 26:5. Answer a fool as his foolishness deserves. Whoa. So wisdom isn't only having one rule. It's discerning which response love requires here. What does love require here? What does love require here? That's healthy. What does love require here? That's what I'm going to do, right? Here's what it says in 2 Timothy 2:23. The servant of the Lord must not participate in quarrels. Come on, somebody. But must be kind to everyone. Kind, not nice. Different. Patient when wronged. You know what's up. You're patient about it, though. Correcting opponents with gentleness. I noticed that this happened. This hurt my heart because this is what it reflected to me. And I wanted to talk to you about that. Ownership, accountability, love, okay? So your responsibility is faithfulness, and God's responsibility is your reputation. Now, how then, a lot of this is helping you, but how do you become the kind of person healthy relationships can grow around? Well, it comes back to fruit. John 15:4, remain in me. He who remains in me bears much fruit. It's just going to happen. But what we do is we start operating apart from God. Okay? Healthy fruit always grows from abiding. It's just a natural process. Paul describes that fruit like this. Galatians 5:22, the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. You have to determine and decide in advance that is going to be one of those fruit. All of that fruit is going to be what you produce. No matter what comes against you, the trials and tests of many kinds, the adversities, the people that rise up against you, you are going to produce the fruit of the Spirit, and you can't do that apart from the Spirit of God. You have to walk according to the Spirit of God. Jesus concludes here, Luke 6:44, each tree is known by its own fruit, right? Bad fruit drops on its own. You don't have to go shake the tree. You don't have to go pluck it and prove it. You just let it fall on its own. Okay? So each tree is known by its own fruit, not by charisma, not by gifting, not by influence, by fruit. Okay? By fruit. Like, just because you have outcomes doesn't mean that God is endorsing or authorizing them. Fruit. Fruit. Okay? Micah summarizes the life God desires here. Micah 6:8. To act justly. This is what you self-examine for. Are you acting justly? To act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. Is that what you're doing? Is that what you're doing? Is that what they are doing? Right? You might see them not acting justly. You might see them not operating in mercy. You might see them not walking humbly with God from your estimation, but only God knows their heart. Okay? So you don't want to get caught up in focusing on that. You want to focus on what you actually have control of and what you can work on with the Lord. Are you acting justly, even when being treated unjustly? Are you loving mercy when it's needed most? Not when it's easy to be merciful, right? Are you walking humbly with God when you would rather choose pride or your ego or something else? That's the kind of person healthy relationships can grow around, because you become stable, you become consistent, you become trustworthy, and people start to see, even if they test you and try you as often as they may, that you are determined to look like Jesus no matter what, and you demonstrate it over and over and over again. Are you human? Yes. Are you imperfect? Yes. But even when you make a misstep or you miss the mark, you make it right, and you go out of your way to do so, which is still demonstrating the nature of Christ. That makes you stable. That makes you trustworthy. That makes you consistent. People can rely on that. They can count on that because they've seen that consistently over time. But that takes a whole lot of effort and maturity that most people will not devote themselves to, because that is a choice to devote yourself to that. It is not random. People don't just end up healthy randomly. They train it. They practice it. Okay? So this is the real question. Not simply, who can I trust, but am I becoming the kind of person whose life is consistently bearing the fruit of Christ? That's my business, and I need to work on that business every single day. Because healthy relationships do not begin when we find the right people. That's the greatest lie. If I just find this person, or if they just find me. No, be that person. Be that person. Healthy relationships begin by becoming the right kind of person. That changes everything. So if this message is challenging you, pay attention to that. Pay attention to that. And if it's doing that, I also invite you to grow in community. One of the things that I found is that you can get access to great information. You can get degrees, and I've gotten several of them. You can go get certified and get many certifications, and I've done that too. You can keep reading books. You can keep going to conferences and seminars. You can keep growing. All good. But if you are not committed to having a space where you are held accountable to that growth, where you don't have people that are actually mentoring you and walking with you, that growth is hard to sustain. Like, think about how many things that you've done where you went and you paid a lot of money, you got a lot of information. Are you even using that today? Think about all the books that are on a shelf. It's shelf help, not self-help, right? Like, it's helping the shelf, not you. That happens a lot. We actually need people that are committed to walking with us, that are committed to spurring us on to love and good works. And I think if we're honest, that is so rare right now. We do not have people discipling and mentoring and building other people up and holding them accountable to their greatest self-actualization in the Lord. But that is a place that I have deliberately been co-creating with the Lord, and it's called Courage Go. And here is where I help leaders grow spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and relationally so that they can become the kind of people that God can trust with greater influence and with people. And if you've been wrestling with questions about discernment, about boundaries, about healthy relationships, I invite you inside Courage Co. to join me for a live masterclass. We do live training in coaching and mentoring every single month. We've got 2 live sessions. So we are doing one on who can you trust on Thursday, the 16th at 7 p.m. Central Time. And we'll go deeper into how to recognize good fruit, into how to steward relationships wisely, and to walk in biblical discernment without becoming suspicious or cynical, okay? And I truly believe that this will equip you, that this will help you love well, and that this will help you lead wisely and follow Jesus with greater confidence. Because those who are secure souls change the world. And that's my aim, to help you be such soul. Okay, so I encourage you, come join us. I'll make sure that you've got all of the links below. I would say if you're committed to shallow living, this is not for you. But if you do want to go out into the deep, for sure, I invite you to start developing and start modeling the way and start pioneering greatness, because you're called to a great life and it starts with you. Thanks for joining me for another episode of God's Vibes. If today's conversation encouraged you, be sure to subscribe, leave a 5-star review, and share this episode with someone who needs it. And if you're ready to move beyond inspiration into transformation, I'd love to welcome you inside Courage Co., our spirit-led leadership formation community where leaders become the kind of people God can trust. Until next time, keep growing, keep stewarding what God's entrusted to you, and remember, your depth is your differentiator.